Hello everyone, my name is Wajahat Hussain, joining you from Pakistan, and I am a campus director in University of Peshawar.
All
And
right.
my project covers SDG 13 and 15. Sorry, and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Please let's keep introducing ourselves in the comment section. I love the excitement. I love the energy as always. Keep it. All right. I see you, Oi, from. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Today's panel session includes Charlie Zong, Angela Zong, and Stephanie Najeri, and they are all esteemed alumni from the Millennium Fellowship Program. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so we're going to have Charlie introduce himself. All right, so Charlie, please, can you introduce yourself with your opening remarks?
Thanks, Victor. It is really energizing to be here in conversation with everyone, thanks to the power of technology. But it's also thanks to you and the power of your stories that have inspired the Millennium Campus Network and UN Academic Impact and funders to launch the Millennium Fellowship. So when I see all our faces on the screen, what I really see are stories. Because to me, what's significant about us being here is that, just like you and me, everyone here has a unique story, and they're all coming together as you start this fellowship. So as a bit of background, we were each asked to speak about how young people in our journeys of impact can build sustainable solutions to humanity's pressing issues. And I want to show you that the ability to create a story is the most important tool on this journey. So I'm Charlie, class of 2023. I was campus director at Duke University in the United States, where I helped scale an organization called South North Scholars into a fully youth-led knowledge network in over 100 countries. And stories form a part of everything we do. We launched the largest youth-led innovation challenge called Solving for Humanity, where we helped young people, thousands of young people around the world, form multicultural teams to combine their individual stories and use them to develop these innovative proposals, explaining what human development meant to them and how to measure progress. And I think individual stories are history. So history is personal, and it's also in the present. So history is in the present because history is the ongoing process of making sense of things you've experienced and why it matters to you. And that's going to be really helpful as you start your journey of being a Millennium Fellow, of thinking about what a pressing issue is in your case. So I'd encourage you to think about the issues that weigh on you and your community the most. That's important because only you know why it's an obstacle. And that's because only you know what your dreams are. So when you are able to start talking about what your dreams are, plus what challenges you face, you start getting a story that actually only you know. And in my case, I grew up in Houston, Texas, which is a very diverse city where incredible wealth lives right next to incredible poverty. And in the community I grew up in, people were constantly solving problems just to survive. So it made me very curious about what would it take for human beings. We each have our own individual struggles and our own dreams to solve problems together. So my pressing issue was collective action. And that's related to the second thing of what is a sustainable solution. So I think a solution is sustainable when enough people with enough resources want to sustain it. And for the biggest problems, because I can see you're all thinking about really big problems, sustainability isn't something an individual can achieve. I grew up in a culture that idolizes the strong individual, and I had to be strong to make it here. But we're here because we're solving problems at scale. And on a large enough scale, the toughest problems last longer than the toughest people. That's what makes them tough. And recognizing that doesn't make you less effective. I think it makes you a leader. The most impactful leaders I've met, whether at the UN or chief executives, they often aren't that eager to solve problems. Instead, they're obsessed with solving the problem of how to bring everyone together to solve those problems. And stories are how people organize around problems and how we learn about solutions. So stories are for doing. And so how do you hear a story like that? I think it's by practicing empathy, one of the fellowship's values. So empathy is hard. It's just hard sometimes to have the energy to empathize when you're struggling with problems that you feel so few people understand. If you're working on tough problems, you're going to be there a lot. So as you start forming these communities, I'd encourage you to practice empathy as a way to receive knowledge about what matters to people. And what do you do with that knowledge? You use it to build a story about collective action. And that's going to require another value of the fellowship, humility. When South North Scholars was just getting started, we had a chance to meet a senior UN leader. And I was thinking something that I know you've all thought, which is, what could we offer that was valuable? And we just had to have the humility that honestly, we weren't sure what was going to be valuable to them, but we were going to find out. And I think making that commitment gave me some bravery. And I went to him and said, can I just have 10 minutes with you and your team? I heard you talk about your vision to engage young people as thought partners. And I think we can do something together that could really make a difference. And he said yes. And then we did so much research. I think we actually found this UNDP strategy document from a few years ago so that we could explain exactly how we were going to meet specific youth engagement goals that they had and why the work they were doing would matter a lot to young people. And that was how we developed the concept of solving for humanity as something that was really needed and also missing. But that humility was driving us to prepare, and that gave us bravery. So we could walk through the fear because we knew why what we proposed would matter for both of us. So that brings us to journeys of impact. Impact is when what you're doing moves something that matters to you. And that means you are necessary for impact. So a sophisticated computer might tell you if a plan will achieve a goal. You know this if you've ever used your phone to try to get somewhere. But only a human being can tell you what kind of goals matter. And I work with large institutions on machine learning and AI. Something I've come to appreciate is there are precious few things in this universe that are human, that possess the power of insight, being able to use a personal history as a guide through the past to see creative solutions to problems and to decide which problems really matter for the good life. I share this because it feels like we're at an inflection point where problems are so complicated, technology is so powerful. And so in your journeys, definitely use technology, use what you can use to make a difference. But also keep in mind that in a sense, we're making a collective decision. Are we going to put humanity at the center of problem solving? So all of us chose to be here in the fellowship, and we pushed through a lot of pain and suffering. And I think it's because we love humanity. And we know that we can't hope to build technologies or societies that work for all of humanity unless we get all of humanity involved. So I'm so grateful for you embracing the value of inclusion in the fellowship, because honestly, it just leads to better solutions. For example, right now there's so much concern about existential risks from AI and making AI safe for humanity. But how often do those conversations focus on how so much of humanity doesn't have access to these technologies and doesn't have a say in how we develop them? And how, when we listen to people on what it will take to have universal access to AI or other technologies, we find that we actually have to address digital literacy, connectivity, peace and security, health, all the way down to no hunger, no poverty. And so by bringing people together holistically on this one challenge, you get all the SDGs. So that's what human beings can do when we embrace the inclusion of all human stories. We're not calculators. So when a problem really matters to humanity, we can even figure out the solution from the end to the beginning. And that's why in Solving for Humanity, we asked young leaders to start with their dream. Because the most critical thing leaders do, and what you'll be doing, is to build a story that frames the issue and helps everyone decide, what does success mean? So in your projects, I'd encourage you to framestorm before you brainstorm. All right, in the last minute, I want to give you 3 tips on how do you create your stories. So the first is make sure it's about you. When you're working on big problems or you grow up in communities dominated by them, we just often forget our own dreams. It can be difficult to remember who you are. So when you explain why you're doing your project, always ask yourself, is this story expressing what interests me and what I want to do? Or is it just about the big problem? So history is a process of reckoning that happens in the present. And that means you actually have to work at it. You need to work at your story. It doesn't just exist. Number two is try to take care of yourself. Basically, it's just really hard to have agency or to be coherent when you're exhausted. So you can't give energy you don't have. And that's personal level sustainability. This is in some ways the hardest thing. And I really struggle with this. I was up at 2 a.m. thinking about this keynote, but I want you to believe in your ability to make an impact in the future. I've been at this long enough, so I can say that leadership can be really lonely sometimes. So try to be a friend to future you. And finally, three, just practice a little bit every day. So stories are for doing. And when you're working on a problem, you're actually telling yourself a story of why it matters inside, internally. So tell it to someone else so they can help you bring it to life. Tell it to another Millennium Fellow who's working on something different. Because in the end, you're all leaders. So you're all working on that universal and utterly human problem of collective action. So I want to end with gratitude for you taking time to join us. And I hope you'll work together with me on this problem. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your work and so much of yourself. I really think it reminds all of us to, yeah, at one step, keep at it, keep working, keep going, but also not to forget that if we are not taking care of ourselves, not thinking about ourselves, the impact we are gonna have, that wouldn't be holistic at all. So thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I'm going to pass it on to Victor again for the next part of the webinar. Over to you, Victor, if you are now able to join us. Okay, I think they're still okay.
All right. All right, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Victor.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much, Charlie. All right, so we are moving on to our next alumni, who is Angela Zong. Angela Zong. All right, so please, can we have your keynote speech?
Yes, can everyone hear me all right? Amazing. Thanks so
Yes, we
much
can
for
hear you.
having me here today. It's a really great opportunity to chat with each and every one of you as you start this new chapter. My name is Angela, and just to briefly introduce myself, I was an alum of the program in 2021, and I'm currently a senior at Harvard University, where I study environmental science, public policy, and economics. And I'm really grateful to be one of the people standing here today and sharing my story. As Charlie said, it's incredibly important to share the perspectives that we came from, and hopefully that encourages you to think a little bit about your story and how you want this opportunity to help you engage in impact work in the future. So I'll start a little bit differently. I think Charlie gave you a great overview of his journey, his story. I'll talk a little bit then about the project that I was working on and how it catalyzed a lot of growth in me. So the first thing to note is this is my first time doing anything of this sort. And so I think this was a really great opportunity to work on an issue that I care deeply about. For me, this was tackling the issue of carbon dioxide, specifically in food production. So thinking about things like waste and meat on campus. What started as a relatively small local community project to address the growing issue drew a connection to me to climate change and became a spark that ignited a lifetime of service and an action. So given this opportunity, I helped design and lead a project in response to what I saw in my everyday life in the dining halls, and with plates of uneaten food, excess meat discarded, while climate change effects became more apparent. So with the small team and the support of the Millennium Campus Fellows, we were able to build a project that was able to reduce food waste, connect with the dining services, and eventually that catalyzed engagements with other programs at Harvard, including the Food Literacy Project. But something remarkable that I think I gained more than just food waste is a platform of students and faculty and staff who deeply cared about the issue, as well as a larger community within the MCN network of people who wanted to create a lasting change. I think this program helped build a movement instead of thinking about it as an individual project. I highly encourage you all to think about this as how it fits into something larger. I saw how service and small actions and grand initiatives can build lifelong commitments and coalitions that drive meaningful change. Some of the people that I first met on this project, I still stay in touch with, and they have gone on to do amazing things, catalyzed by the support from the Millennium Campus Network, which is something that is still going on today. From that project, I realized my passion for climate and sustainability. Like Charlie, I also grew up in Houston, and so I think this definitely shaped a lot of my interest, seeing natural disasters happen, seeing lots of flash floods, energy grid failures, etc. And I think from this program and with its support, I've also been able to leverage my story at other platforms. This summer, I was most recently able to reconnect with MCN alums at a Coachtopia event in New York City. I've also been able to speak at events like COP and Davos about the project and how everything has been going on since then, and even engage in high-level events at the United Nations. But looking back, this project was just the beginning. It taught me that service isn't just a single event, and that true change happens when we engage with others and identify how we can create change from within institutions as well as from outside. If we must refuse to be daunted by the scale of the problems that we face, and that's a mindset that I think the Millennium Campus Fellows helps cultivate. SDGs are a really big topic, but we can start where we are and tackle the issues that speak to our communities. And from that, we build relationships that will sustain our work. I think the most important thing that I can leave you with is that none of this work is done alone. The MCN network is a global network of change makers, and together I hope we can create a future that is more of a just system and not just a system. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much, Angela. All right, let me just read the bio of Angela in a few minutes. Angela Zong is a senior from Austin studying economics, environmental science, public policy. She has prior experience working with startups. I think that's done already. All right, so let's have the final alumni. Please, can you come in? Stephanie, please, can you come in? Please go ahead with your keynote speech and your initial remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to appreciate the panel that came before me. It's inspiring to see what you're doing. You know, it's also motivational as well. I'm also happy and very motivated by a number of people, you know, who have just signed up for this cohort for the Millennium Fellowship this year. It's so inspiring. It's also amazing to see all of you here. That means each and every one of you has an idea that's cooking, and I'm super excited to see how that's going to turn out. Also, I'd like to thank the Millennium team as well as the United Nations Academic Impact Network, you know, for especially launching the Millennium Fellowship program that allows us to have such a platform to interact with each other. So just to introduce myself, I am Stephanie Njeri from Nairobi, Kenya. I am alumni from the 2019 cohort, amongst the first fellowships that actually took place. My educational background is in sociology and psychology from Kenyatta University, and currently I am a social entrepreneur. I am passionate about youth and young people, and I am engaging in dabbling more or less in agriculture through my own venture. It's called Uko Farm Products, that deals with food security in terms of value addition, land restoration, and also through championing organic farming practices. Additionally, I am also the founder and executive director of WAZI community-based organization. It's a youth-led and youth-focused organization that champions the domestication of the SDGs, particularly in health, education, and advocacy. We operate mostly in informal settlements within Nairobi. And so far, we have at least gotten a track of almost 3,500 young people that we've benefited through our programs. Equally, young people, youth, we are also interacting with youth. We have reached out to around 250 youth and other members of the community. So I think a lot has been said prior, which I definitely agree with. So just to get to my story, perhaps. At the campus level, when I got involved with the Millennium Fellowship, I wasn't really sure on what to expect. It just, as I said, I'm passionate about youth and young people. So it just offered an opportunity for myself as a youth to engage. So I signed up, I got in, and at the Kenyatta University level, I got involved with everyone who had signed up as well. The experience was relatively new. I hadn't really gone for a position in leadership, or rather just taking charge at the time at all. So when it came down to actually running the project, I was the campus projects coordinator. So we were working around a program around mental health. At the time, particularly in Kenya, we were having a lot of cases of young people dealing with a lot of mental health issues. And from our campus, we had many people who are even committing suicide, and depression that just is taking so much away from them. So we decided to actually get involved. So we partnered with other organizations in schools, such as the peer counseling team, the gender action movement, and other organizations, where we had campaigns around mental health. We took people through training where you can act as a counselor yourself, as well as other people, so that they can learn on how to manage their mental health well-being. So from that point onwards, it just gave me, a different perspective on life. From the time I actually engaged with the Millennium Fellowship, immediately I left after is when I actually came up with WAZI, my community-based organization, which is now currently up and running and functional with different programs, such as mentorship programs. We're also running a menstrual hygiene management and innovative approach, where we've just started installing dispensers. This is something that hasn't been done. We're currently piloting at Kenyatta University. We've had programs around disaster risk management. We've also had other programs around drug use and in education, such that we are supporting grassroots educational centers, through materials and other learning resources, as well as training the teachers and other workers as staff who will be interacting with children and young people. So probably what I can say is just on practical tips, doing two things per se. That means the Uko Farm, which as I said, is an agricultural enterprise, and as well as WAZI, the community-based organization that mainly focuses on youth and young people. So, I can say, at this point, I realize a lot of us want to do so many different things. And, you start by thinking this is your passion, and then probably a couple of months into it, or probably a year into it, and you're like, no, probably this is the route I should be taking, or, you're just probably stuck between things that you're still weighing your options on. So, that's perfectly okay. And as a young person, I believe we have time, and we have all the resources to do everything that we can. And provided you can do it, that's okay, go ahead with it. That's good. But I'd like for you to just focus on probably being specific about a particular challenge you'd like to address, not only necessarily a challenge, but what you want for yourself long term. Just focus on that for now. And, once you're in it, also try and collaborate Charlie started by saying you can't achieve sustainability alone, which I believe that's definitely true. For instance, in terms of Wazi, we just recently received a grant to run the menstrual hygiene program. And, we had to partner with community, and not only community in terms of the residents, but also other institutions that are there. We're also working with other organizations. We're working with the authorities. We're working with different, just collaborate with people within your field and also learn as much as you can from them. You each have something to offer. And being especially a young person, there's so much you have to learn before you actually can get to say to a point that you can say that you are at a mastery point per se. So just collaborate with people, get to know how everything is moving, learn and unlearn as much as you can. Also, as just Charlie said, be able to tell your story, record it as much as you can, no matter how small or how big, whatever you're doing is, just be able to record it and, just be able to showcase it to perhaps other people, particularly in the field of the community. You definitely need to monitoring and evaluation. You actually need to show this is how we started, this is how we're going. So perhaps work around that, and also be consistent and perhaps be passionate about it, because this is a bit tough. I'm not gonna discourage you from doing it. It's a bit tough. Every other day there are some challenges that are coming up while we are at it, but if you're passionate about it, you're more likely to stick with it and be consistent. You're still going to show up if other people are not showing up. You're still going to show up when, times are tough. You're just going to show up. So I'd like for you to also perhaps think about something that you're passionate about. So as I said, I'm so glad to be here. I'm also looking to hear what each and every one of you is up to. And if you're within Kenya, perhaps Nairobi, drop me a link. We can probably try and follow up with each other on how you're going to be going through this session, perhaps. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for that exciting and amazing remark. I can't imagine how much Millennium Fellowship has literally impacted quite a lot of people. I heard the story from Stephanie, I heard the story from Charlie. That's quite amazing. Your journey of social impact is so inspiring. In fact, I've been able to pick about 3-4 powerful things that I know has also inspired a lot of people who are listening here today, a lot of fellows, and this is just so wonderful. Thank you so much for that amazing remark, Stephanie, and thank you so much to our alumni panelists. Your remarks have been so insightful, even in these few minutes. Thank you so much already. All right, our team has just a few questions for you. I know there are a lot of questions on the hearts of a lot of people here, but before we go into those questions, I just want to ask a few questions. The one, a lot of time we struggle to find our calling. There are fellows who are excited at the initial stage and they lose the sense of why they started this journey of social impact in the first place. So I want to ask, what actually inspired you in this part and what inspires you to keep at it? All right, so I don't know, Angela, if you would want to start us off with that. What actually inspired you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for the opportunity. A couple of things. I think one, I briefly mentioned, but my hometown was hit by a lot of natural disasters, and I think that's really mobilized a lot of interest in making sure that that doesn't happen to other communities. And two, I think also witnessing how so many livelihoods were tied to the oil and gas industry in my hometown also made me realize that a just transition is not only inevitable, but it is required in like a way that allows for these people to have jobs in ways that allow for these families to put food on the table. And I think that that's definitely been a part of my mission. I think the other part of your question talks a little bit about burnout and how people sometimes lose focus of where they want to put their attention. There's a lot of different issues that we could work on. And I think that that's definitely fair. One is that there's also nothing wrong with changing focuses. I think I started in food, but I think I've maybe pivoted a little bit into the broader category of like decarbonization. But also, I think if you find yourself feeling a little lost, then that might be a good time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Think about what new communities and networks you're part of and how they might support you towards the overall mission that you were intending to work on. Because if you do feel burnt out, I think you're just going to maybe not do as great of a job as you would otherwise. And so I think that's the perfect time to recalibrate and see what other opportunities might be on the table. I don't think that anyone expects like for one person to solve the entirety of these problems. And there's just a lot of weight that people put on themselves. And I think that being in community with other people can definitely help feel that you're not alone in this struggle.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. Your boss also says you have some amazing plans as regards decarbonization. Right, thank you so much. That's a very, very amazing story. And I know someone has been inspired by that. All right, Charlie, do you have something to say as regards that? What inspired you on this part? What is motivating you? What's the fire behind all you're doing? Because I know many times there will be discouragement. In this social impact journey, there are a lot of things that will discourage you, but there's something that drives you. Please, can you share that with us?
Of course. And thank you. And thank you to Angela for a really thoughtful response. I was just thinking about what was shared in the panels, and I think two things come to mind here, and they're things that Stephanie shared. One is her point about consistency and how she talked about showing up and really pushing through some of the discouragement, through the ambiguity. And I think that's really important because I had mentioned in my keynote that when you're making a story, stories are really about doing, and they're not just things that exist. They're things that you develop by being part of trying to solve a problem and understanding how that relates to your dreams. It's just really hard to build a story like that if you're not involved in doing something, or if you don't have a dream you're trying to achieve, even if you're not quite sure what it is, but just showing up and trying again and again to get closer to what you think would improve your life and the lives of those in your community. That's a really powerful way to stay motivated. On the second point,
thank you. All right. I'm listening.
I think,
yeah,
of course, I also think it's really important to have different levels of goals in mind. So on one hand, it's important to have specific ideas for how you can get involved, because you want to get involved and do things so that you can start building a story and you can have a story that motivates you. But also you want to think about broader themes. So this is what Angela was articulating about, there's decarbonization as a broader theme, and then there are many things within it. If you can think about what the broader theme is, then that can help keep you motivated when specific things you're doing are not showing clear results. And it also helps you to apply what I call the necessity principle of just only doing what's necessary and doing things that where it's clear why it needs to be done and that it's needed and missing, is the way we put it with Solving for Humanity. I think just having that instinct in mind, finding out what's needed and missing and not being afraid to be flexible, as Angela said, I think that's very motivating, because then you're solving a problem that you can solve in one way or another, rather than a very narrow problem that sometimes can be difficult.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think I got two things very, very clear. Showing up. You have to show up. Social impact journey, you have to show up. Whether you are tired, sometimes it's good to rest, but you need to show up. And focusing on problems. I think the more you think about problems, the more you are productive as regards solutions. Thank you so much for that. All right, moving on to the second question. And for fellows, we're going to be moving to the question and answer section soon. So you can get your questions ready. You can begin to put it in the chat section. All right, thank you so much for that. Moving on to the second question, where for you, focusing on creating sustainable solutions to humanity's most pressing issue is key. Do you have any advice for us young leaders when it comes to implementing our projects? All right, Stephanie, what are your thoughts on that? What can you say to us about that? What advice do you have for us as young leaders when it comes to implementing our projects?
Okay, just to echo what Charlie had said, when you're working on your project, you actually need to find a need. Like it's it's going to be needed by your community. They're going to use it, or by your target demography, they're going to use it. So definitely you're going to need to come up with a need, and that need is perhaps challenges that are within your community, or a challenge that you're intending to solve. By the point that you're already in this group shows that you already have a challenge in mind, or you have an idea on how to solve something. So that's a start. My second point is define your mission and vision, and perhaps just your plan of action. You need to keep on checking back with your milestones. Am I doing this? And also set timelines for them. It kind of makes it easier for you to check back and see, oh, I need to do this by this time. And, make sure at least it's much easily attainable. And also, as I said earlier, ask for help, particularly as young people and as youth. There are a lot of opportunities to help. There are a lot of opportunities for capacity building, for funding, a lot of them, but we don't take those opportunities. I can speak for myself and perhaps many other young people, particularly at the university level. You have structures put in place to help you out. So even if you have a half-baked idea, or you're just kind of in the ideation phase of it, go to your faculty, try and get someone who's going to help you through it, and just think it through slowly. You're going to get expertise, you're going to get all the resources that you might need at practically, zero budget completely. They're just going to be helping you out. So ask for help and also collaborate. Find people who are equally, in line with what you're trying to achieve, and work with them for sustainability purposes, particularly. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. If I got that, it's not just about thinking about problems. You need to have your strategy. You need to have your plan. You need to clearly define it. You need to write out what exactly you want to do. You need to ask for help. I think that's one of the benefits of Millennium Fellowship. It gives you a network to a wide range of people. So you're connecting with people from all over the world. You meet people who have similar interests. And when you define your goals, you create a timeline. All right, I want to do this in the next 3 months. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Angela, do you have something to say as regards that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely want to echo everything that Stephanie has said. I think there's so many different ideological ways in which you can approach a problem, and not everyone will agree with the route that you chose. But as long as that route is something that is informed by your lived experiences as well as that of the community around you, then I think you will find people who are willing to support that strategy. And I think that that's the ultimate thing that you need to succeed. Because if you don't have people in your corner backing you and supporting you, then I think that projects become less likely to be sustainable over time, as well as less likely to be sustainable over generations. So if you want to leave that legacy, make sure that you know what your values are and how that relates to the strategies that you want to take to solve the problems at hand.
All right, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. I think it's not too early to begin to collaborate, fellows. So if you have fellows on your campus, look for that person who is doing a similar project with you, who is focused on a similar SDG. You can collaborate with guys from other countries of the world. All right, thank you so much to our panelists. All right, we're going to start receiving questions from the fellows. We are moving on to the question and answer section. All right, so please put your questions in the chat box, and you can also raise your hand. And when you're on mute, please ask your questions, but please introduce yourself first. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat section and raise up your hand so you can be given an opportunity to ask questions. All right, I'm waiting for hands that are raised.
Olamide, as you're waiting, I see actually a great question from Charles in the chat box. And I know that's something that most fellows seem to want to answer. So perhaps you can take that first. And I can read the question for you. The question is, every project needs financial help. Can you guys share how you got your financial support? I'm looking at you, Stephanie. Do you want to go first with this one?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Probably seeing as I've started two entities and I've actually needed to gather some financial support. Finances are often a challenge for young people. Even at this point, we got a grant, but we're still looking for more grants and we're looking for ways that our projects can be income generating, amongst other things. So probably what I can say is when we were starting off, we mostly worked around crowdfunding. I don't know what crowdfunding platforms you have on your end, but for instance, you could probably check with GoFundMe, as well as if you're in Kenya, there's the one called Changa. We had a public crowdfunding platform that was one of the ways we actually raised support for our projects. Not only that, as I also talked about partnerships, you'd find you need money for probably, let's say, an equipment, but there is a whole organization that has that particular equipment and they're not using it. So make a point of knowing who are other supporters or who are the people that you're working within the similar field with. They can also help you out. It might not be monetary per se, but they can definitely connect you to opportunities and resources which you most definitely will need. And equally, we also do proposal writing. We hand in for competitions and proposals when they're open. We request for grants. And most of the times we've gotten the no's. There are so many. So, it's difficult. You come prepared, but you get there and then you probably find that, there's something that you need to go back and redo and whatnot. And, before you actually get to a point where you're actually getting funding coming in through well, you actually have to need a properly structured, a plan of action, or your project is already in prototype. That way the people can see already, this is what we expect from it. This is probably what is needed to be adjusted and whatnot. So make sure you also have something. If you're going for the funding and whatnot, don't just go with an idea, but try to have it started up. It makes it much easier for people who are willing to fund you because the funds are out here. For young people, particularly for youth, the opportunities and the funding is definitely out here. So just make a point of being, just checking up where the funds are going to be and apply for them as well.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. All right, I see a question from Mazidat. She asked, what are some of the challenges you faced during your fellowship and how did you deal with them? Please, can you share with us? All right, Charles, do you have something to say as regards that? How did you deal with the challenges you faced during your fellowship?
You're asking me because I was the campus director? Because that was a challenge. Okay. Well, the really interesting thing about the fellowship is that when you're in the fellowship, it's kind of intense. You're meeting once a week, and some campuses I've heard meet 2 or 3 times a week. We were not as motivated, but we did meet once a week. And so there's a lot of planning involved and a lot of active projects. And I just go back to that point about long-term focus. It's really hard to both do what you need to do in the moment and have long-term focus, but that long-term focus is extremely important for staying motivated and also for being flexible and making changes to your approach when you need to. So I would say that having a long-term focus of, okay, I'm in this community, we're going to have a fellowship that meets once a week for a semester, but then we're going to be around our campuses for another year or two, and we're going to be in this network that you're in now. This is why you're talking to us. You're going to be in this network for a very long time, as long as you want to be. So thinking broadly is really helpful here. Thinking about the full extent of the network you have access to is really important. And it goes back to that question Charles asked about getting financial resources. I think I mean, first I'll say that is really difficult. It's really tough, and it never gets easier. And this is something, even if you talk to Sam, who's the executive director, he'll tell you that it's just really difficult all the time. But we can also think of our resources a little more broadly and think about networks as resources. Think about people you know as resources. They're both resources for knowledge, and they're resources in that they might know people that might have funding. So, it's never really who you know, it's who knows who you know. And so broadening your network is one of the best ways to come into contact with more opportunities. And you can do that through this network.
All right, thank you so much for that amazing answer. I think he just asked a question that is on the hearts of a lot of people. All right, thank you so much. Fellows, please feel free to put your questions in the comment section. And if you want to speak, you can also raise up your digital hands and you'll be given an opportunity. All right, I see Idera Olua Moses. Okay. All right, please, can you unmute yourself? Please introduce yourself before you ask. Thank you so much.
It's so awesome to be here. My name is Idera, and I'm a medical student at Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. So my project is focused on menstrual hygiene management, and I was so excited when I heard Stephanie talk about it because I was like, yes, finally, someone who is interested in the same things that I am. So my first question is for Stephanie, especially as a Kenyan, and I would say as an African, there are some challenges, some sociocultural barriers that you might have faced. For example, I run a company or a brand called Ivy Cup, and what we do is we teach about menstrual cups and menstrual health and menstrual education. So I have faced a lot of sociocultural barriers in people feeling like menstruation is a taboo. My topic is a taboo, and it's not something that should be discussed. So I want to know from Stephanie what barriers she faced on that topic, and more importantly, how she was able to navigate and overcome that. That's my first question. Then my second question is on team building, and this question is for I'm really curious how you were able to build on the power of human beings and how you're able to build.
All right, we can't really hear you clearly.
Hi.
All right. Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, awesome. So I was saying my second question. Did you get my first question?
Yes, we heard your first question.
So my second question is, how can you leverage the power of team building? And that's specifically for Charles. I want to know how he was able to leverage the power of finding people who are like-minded, who are focused on the same things that you are, and working together to achieve your common goals. It's not easy to find people who are as motivated or who are interested in those same things. So how do you work on building teams that actually work? So those are my two questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for that. All right, so I think, Charles, you can answer the second question and Stephanie can answer the first.
Okay. That's a very good question, particularly when you're working with youth and particularly adolescents and young people. There's a lot of taboo and, cultural differences when it comes to menstrual hygiene or matters of sexual and reproductive health. And this is a challenge that we actually faced, with the parents, with authorities, with the students as well, the participants themselves and whatnot. So with regards to that, the first thing we did was more of target the parents and, teachers and other people who facilitate the day-to-day lives of young people particularly. So when we were able to reach out to them first, and then we shared with them what our curriculum entailed. So as you're saying there, we also have cups and tampons, which are more of a taboo, particularly for young people. 18 and below, that's always going to be a challenge. You need consent from parents, and they also need to understand what you're doing. So we cultivated a relationship with the caregivers, both parents, guardians, teachers. We were able, and the community halls that we were working around with, we made them sure that we had them through our session, and we made sure they actually understand what we are doing. That way, there is no any contentious issues once we come up and say that we'll be handling the sessions for youth and young people around menstrual hygiene, which has also been a bit of a challenge. But the more they actually get to understand what they're doing, the more easy it is to have them bring their young people, their young children to the sessions on menstrual hygiene and whatnot. Equally, menstrual hygiene is not given much of a priority as compared to, other issues that affect women and girls, when this is a key issue that affects every woman and girl, for as long as you're within menstruation age, and that starts as early as even 10 at this point. So majority of the people are affected by this problem, but menstrual hygiene, in other words, is not equally given the urgency that it needs to be given. So at this point, we are actually trying to partner with other organizations, with our biggest collaborator being the government. The state is always the biggest actor that you're going to work with, and other now NGOs, other private organizations who are equally in manufacturing. Because again, remember, giving out pads every other day, that's not a sustainable solution. You need sustainable solution. Perhaps if it's manufacturing, can you manufacture biodegradable pads, not just any kind of pads? We need pads that are good for the environment, as well as those that will cater for women and girls as well, within their time of need as well. Affordability, we're looking at accessibility, we're looking at the policy around it. So there's a lot of layers, overlapping when it comes to menstrual hygiene. And my advice would be to focus on one thing particularly, and just while once you're going through with it, everything else is just going to come in place. Like right now we are focusing on policy, but equally we are having the project that's ongoing at Kenyatta University. So we have a project that is running, and from that project we are able to publish our findings, and through research and development, monitoring and evaluation, we are able to give feedback. As I said, you need a prototype. So we are able to give feedback that this is what is needed, and these are the challenges that need to be addressed, and it's an actual issue that is persistent within our community. So yeah, I hope we're together on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie, for that. All right, so Charles, please, can you answer question?
Yeah, apologies. I do have to jump. I will say very quickly on the topic of team building. First of all, it's extremely important. When I was younger, I used to think that having a successful effort was something like 80% having the right idea, and then maybe like 10% having the right culture and 10% having the right people. And it's actually the other way around. It's like any organization, whether it's a business or an NGO or like the UN, it's like 80% having the right people, and then working together with those people to come up with a good idea, and then working together on making a good culture so that idea can happen. It's really like that. And so how do you figure out if you've got the right people? I mean, there's not really an objective answer to this, but I would emphasize the action principle, which is really, it's really great when people are enthusiastic. But one of the things you'll find being a leader, especially in the social sector, is that enthusiasm has like kind of an expiration date on it, and then pain takes over. And so you want to pay really close attention, especially at the beginning, to what people say they will do and whether they do what they say they'll do. And if they don't, that doesn't mean that they're bad people, but it just means that maybe they need some more support, they need some coaching, or maybe you want to turn your attention to other people. If someone's reliable, as in they do what they say they'll do, that's a really big asset. Like sometimes when things are painful and when things are difficult and you're just doing things and not getting clear results, you need people who are reliable, and you also want to model that reliability. So looking at what people do is a really good way to figure out who might make sense to be on a team with. And then the last thing I'll say is that it's also important when thinking about teamwork to just, as I was saying earlier, take care of yourself. When you're trying to solve a tough problem, you're almost by definition in the top 1% of people that care about that problem. And that means that there are going to be lots of things that happen that cause people to stop working together. People have lots of pressures in life and people have to do things. And so taking care of yourself is a really great way to stay capable of working on the problem. you in some sense evolve as a leader when you go from working as a team to back down to working as one or two people, and then up to maybe working in a small team and then up to a large team, right? So you want to be able to handle each of these different organizational contexts, and you do that by practice. Like it's really impossible to learn how to do this and learn how to manage people and learn how to learn from others without just doing it. So the more you can do, the better. You know, the only failure a lot of times in social sector and in general in life is just not doing. Like if you're just not doing, you're not learning. You know, as long as you're doing and you're learning, then at this age we have the whole future ahead of us. So be a friend to your future self and give them the opportunities to learn from you now. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. We are actually past time already. But Stephanie, Angela, would you be willing to stay for an extra 10 minutes to address a few more questions? If not, that's perfectly fine. Because I know we're past time already.
More. I have to head to class after, but happy to chat.
All right. So I just want to take a question from the chat section. All right. So I saw a question from Becky Bay. All right, let me just ask this question. How many people did you, this question was directed to Charlie. How many people did you collaborate with during the 3 months of your fellowship? But you can answer that. Angela, you can answer that. How many people did you collaborate with during your 3 months of fellowship? Because I know collaboration has been spoken about today, networking, you're not doing things on your own, you're leveraging on your network and people around you who share similar visions. Like, how were you able to do the collaborations during your time, during your fellowship?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for the question. I would count this by the number of communities I was in, and then maybe if you really want a number, we can like multiply out how many people in each group. But basically, I think one community was definitely the cohort that I was with, so roughly 8 to 10 people. And then second was the organizations I partnered with at Harvard. So this includes the Food Literacy Project, the Dining Services, the Vice Provost for Sustainability, the Undergraduate Committee, of the dorms that people stay in, because that's where the cafeterias are hosted. So I think that those are some of the main stakeholders that I mapped out as people that I definitely wanted to get a chance to talk to. And through that, I also met people like in the Office for Sustainability, in the Salata Center for Climate. And I think that those definitely helped elevate my platform and make sure that no matter who the decision maker was, even if I didn't know who it was at that time, I already knew the set of people that it could be. And so I think that made socializing my ideas and creating change a lot easier because we had built up a rapport and a relationship already. And so I think that's definitely an area that I would highlight as you think about your journeys. So mapping out who are the potential barriers and then turning them into allies. That's a little bit of an overview. Would love to hear from you as well, Stephanie, but I'm just going to drop my link in the chat since I do have to head to class, but thank you guys so much for having me.
All right, thank you so much. I actually found the question I was looking for, but thank you so much, Angela. Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time and your insights. I believe this has really inspired a lot of fellows here today, and there's so much to take home. We learned so much from you today. Thank you so much, Millennium Fellows, for making this possible, for being available. Thank you for your engaging questions. I feel these questions are not just for yourself alone, they are for hundreds of fellows out there. All right, so join us for our next webinar, which is happening this Friday with Daniela Khan. Make sure you keep your eye on your emails and your university portal for your RSVP details. Thank you so much for joining. Goodbye, and see you on